In the last several weeks, I've been watching a whole country in upheaval because they are sweating the selection of one person in the whole country for an office. It's a big office. But I've seen passion on both sides. I've seen emails come crazy to my office, to my email. I've seen all kinds of things. I watched the Ranker. I've read the culture. I'm seeing all this stuff. And you know what has occurred to me? I would love to see the same passion for living for Christ that I see on one election, on one day in all of history for a 4-year term of one person in our country. As if our whole future can be changed and determined by the election of one person. And I would argue with you, friends, that today your greater hope is that if the people of God would honor the Christ who laid down his life for them and live that as boldly as we have been living and talking about elections, our world would be different. Amen. It's scary to me that the church is silent about their witness, but we will blog and we will post all day long to testify for our candidate, whoever that may be. And it's occurred to me, isn't it supposed to be the opposite way? Not to go and say, I'm going to make everybody else feel guilty about it, but this is what I believe. I believe that Jesus is the Christ. He said himself, no one comes to the Father but by him. And so that does make it an exclusive religious proposition. It's not my word, it's his. But that's what he said, that's what I'm going to believe, that's what I'm going to live. And he filled this word with all kinds of descriptions of life that was good, and he filled it with all kinds of descriptions of life that he called sin. And sin is sin, whether this is the 21st century or the first. And I will treat as sin those things he defines as sin, and I will treat as good those things he defines as good. Are you living that? Not with a somber face, but to say, this is the truth. Of course I would live that. I'm stirred up. I read this week about people who have gone through the Reformation, reading about people who began to experience the scriptures and saying, wait, this talks about a different practice than what we've been doing. In the 1500s, they were looking at this and saying, this says that what my parents did for me is not my decision. I have to make a decision. I have to decide if I'm going to follow Christ or not. And if I follow Christ, I have to obey him. And some of the things he said are these. And one of those was baptism. He said, I don't know why, I don't understand all of it, but he said, this is what you're supposed to do. So they dared to be baptized as believers, as adults. And it was considered heresy. And so one of them was tied up and he was sentenced to death by drowning because he dared believe that. This is a different time, a different culture. And so they took him down the riverside, and as he is going to his death, his mother and siblings are calling out to him, be faithful. Because following Christ was more important than life. We don't get that. And so we argue about all kinds of other things, and we miss the bigger picture. That God has called us to be his. Period. And what you do in your classrooms, what you do in your offices, how you live in your dating life, how you deal with integrity, how you live out your morals, how you treat your neighbor, how you treat your customers is all part and parcel of the fact that you are not your own. You belong to the man who stretched out his arms and was nailed to a cross. And he had the audacity to call us to follow him with all of our hearts, all of our soul, all of our mind. That's the big picture. That's it. And as I read about these stories about people who faced life and death and said, I will accept death rather than deny my Christ, I went, well, that sounds biblical. But it is absolutely foreign to us. But it's not foreign to the woman who watches her home burn in Ambon. It's not foreign to the man who holds his child up to a visiting Westerner so that perhaps their baby might survive as they face possible, likely martyrdom. It's not foreign to people living in some countries where it is illegal to profess Christ. It's not foreign to a woman whose face is still recovering from the beating she took because she had the audacity to claim that Jesus is the Son of God and the hope of humankind. And I wondered, are we willing to trust him that much? It's likely we will never face it in our culture. But given where our nation is headed spiritually, unless the people of God allow the power of God to be demonstrated in them, my great-great-grandchildren will probably see that day. So, I'll be a responsible citizen in our culture and I will vote my convictions. But I have not had my eternity turned upside down by who wins which debate. Because I think there's more at stake. There are bigger fish to fry. More hanging in the eternal balance. And my prayer is that our church, and not just us, but the church, believers, real believers, would make a far bolder stand in how they live in their world than how they picket a convention. I am the Lord Almighty, he says. Walk faithfully before me. Live blamelessly. Because you are mine. And the question you have to answer is that true for you?